there was a huge reaction to karate because a lot of people saw it as invasive. They didn't want the Māori language on their TV, in their homes, and so we battled not only with our viewers, but we also sort of fought hard to get facilities. So we worked a lot on the weekends when no one else was, using the crews. In those days there were 5 crews and it was hard to get one. We worked up to the stage where we would go out and do a news bulletin in English, do the interviews in English, and then in Māori, and we'd come back and a reporter would cut the story for the English version for 6 o'clock news, or whenever the news was at the time, 6:30 I think at the time, and we cut one for Te Karere. There were some disconcerting moments. One particular time, Derek and I were on the way to a shoot in the northern Hokianga Harbour area, and we stopped on the way home, I think at Apanui for a beer, and I think we stayed there that night on the way home. And a few gang members came up to us and said, "Oh, we know you guys. What are you doing here?" And then we explained that we were Te Karere because it was fairly new at that time, and the whole demeanour changed. So we got shouted a couple of jugs of beer and we parted the best of buddies. Our specific aim was not really the keeping alive of the Māori language, as some people will say now. Our job was to put out the news that would be of importance to Māori, but do it in the Māori language. That was the object of the exercise, getting news out in the Māori language. It wasn't keeping the Māori language alive, because the news aspect was the important one. The opening in New York was huge. The closing in Chicago was a big affair, and I noticed that the American young people came in their droves to the Field Museum to have a look at this culture, and they knew nothing about it, and they hardly knew where New Zealand was, but it made an impact on America, on American people. The difficult part was what to leave out. It was hard in those days because we were shooting exhibits that were sacred. There were certain things that you couldn't do. You couldn't move them around to get them into a better light or things like that. So you had to be very careful in the way that we did shoot them. And the other thing was that we also had to be as unobtrusive as we possibly could, because we didn't want to spoil the pleasure that people were having from being there and looking at them. In the early days of going to Waitangi, all the ambassadors would be up there. The naval parade will be full on, and the pomp in the ceremony was great to watch. And then you had the first of the protests that took place there, and then through the years where you got to expect the protests. I think it's incumbent on people covering such things is to look at for the reason for protest rather than the protest itself. The protest itself is probably the angle of the story that most reporters would see. But good reporters would see the reason for protest and say, hey, what's going on here? Why are so many people? There are 200 people in that march. Why are they thinking along? You know, what lines are they thinking along? Have they been put up to it? And if so, who by? Let's dig into this to see what it is. We'll show the pictures of the protests, but let's have a look at why they're there. And that was hardly ever done. We were offered or given the Sunday morning because that was the only slot we had going for us. It was either in there or not there at all. We took the Sunday morning. And I'm proud that we took the Sunday morning. Later on, people said, oh, it's ghettoised and all that sort of thing. That criticism could be thrown at TVNZ, but not at us. It wasn't of our making. But what we had was time on television, and whether we had 20,000 viewers or 400,000 viewers, at least we got the message through. New Zealand Wars was the brainchild of Colin Cray. I don't think anyone except a handful of people, and they would be those who were involved with the making of New Zealand Wars, expected it to rate in any way. The broadcaster didn't think it would rate, but it rated at 28 on its first night, which was huge for any show, locally made show. And then all hell broke loose because it started off as a 28 and it didn't drop. While the popularity of the show was good, and yet it was based on interviews with today's people, with a lot of photographs and a lot of drawings. The artwork told or helped to tell many, many stories. So there was a lot of work put in there and a lot of money. And, you know, I take my hat off to Colin for persevering with the project. I have a young friend who has his own dojo, and he teaches martial arts, and he's doing an honours degree in English at Auckland University. His dad wants to get hold of the wakahuia programs on the martial arts of the Māori, because he'd like his son to see those and to make any comparisons with the style that he is using to teach his students. So that's one of the things that really makes me think, hey, these shows are of use. There is some point in New Zealand trying to relish and to keep alive some aspects of Māori, the Māori language, so that it becomes a normal part of life and a normal part of our television viewing, a normal part of our reading and talking and so on.